Okay, what is going on, everybody? It is Brett. I am here with a solo movie review. I am here for Pop Culture Crisis to review The Equalizer 3 starring Denzel Washington. Before we get started, I will say off the bat, look, Denzel Washington is perhaps my favorite actor working today, has been for a very long time. I love his work. But the funny thing is, out of all of Denzel's movies, I think, if I'm being honest, the first two Equalizers aren't very high on the list. I think part of that is because the first Equalizer came out in 2014, and right at that time, let's be honest, it was a John Wick year if you were looking for this type of revenge thriller. You know, it's the guy with the CIA background. You can take out a dozen people without even blinking an eye. And I think that Keanu Reeves and in the John Wick franchise, they sucked up a lot of the air, but I still enjoyed that first one. And I'm going to be honest, I don't remember a whole bunch about the second Equalizer movie, but all three have been directed by Antoine Fuqua, who, him and Denzel work fantastic together, whether we're talking Training Day. This movie also does something special, which reunites him with Dakota Fanning. And if I'm being honest, again, I rewatched Man on Fire, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I also rewatched Deja Vu recently. I've been watching a bunch of older Denzel movies lately. And, seeing him get to team up again with Dakota Fanning, albeit fairly briefly, is very cool when you think about Dakota Fanning was just a child. I believe Man on Fire came out in 2004 and Deja Vu came out in 2006. So seeing him and her together, she's a full-grown adult now. She plays an analyst and new field agent for the CIA. That was very, very cool. This movie it's a slow pace. You get a couple, 2 or 3 very, very brutal action scenes. And if you're there for the revenge, if you're going to this movie to see the revenge, those are going to have to satiate you. And they do it well. But the middle points of this movie, it's a lot of Denzel recovering from something that happens at the very beginning. And what it is that he has committed these acts against a drug kingpin at the start of the film, and he gets injured on the way out. And then what happens is he is taken by a police officer to the home of someone in the southern part of Italy. And what happens is the actual village or wherever he is here in Italy, it becomes a character in and of itself. First of all, the visuals are fantastic. It sells the story to you very, very well that Robert McCall is out here, and he develops a fondness for the locals who come to really, really love having him there. And the village that he's in, the location that he's in, is under the thumb of a local drug kingpin, different from the one that you see earlier in the film. And eventually the things that the villagers have to suffer become too much for McCall, and he has to take action. I enjoyed, perhaps more than anything, is Denzel on screen. Anytime Denzel Washington is on the screen, it doesn't matter that it's not the most action-packed scene ever. There is just something about his magnetic and calming screen presence that both works for those scenes, helps endear you to the people he's interacting with, but also acts as a sort of it makes you shudder when you then see the violence that the character is capable of later on. And that kind of dichotomy is really, really good for both the storytelling, but also conveys the seriousness of what's on screen. If I could make one big complaint about this movie, other than the fact that perhaps some people would have wanted a faster pace, is that the secondary story, which concerns Dakota Fanning's character, though it does tie back to previous previous parts of the series, I think it could have been cut out completely, if I'm being completely honest. It could have been cut out completely, because anytime Denzel isn't on screen, the movie tends to suffer. Now, all his scenes with Dakota Fanning are great, and all of his scenes with the locals are great, but anytime we go away from his character, you start to feel like the film's starting to lag. There's something about his presence that really keeps you engaged. And this movie's not long. Another big thing this movie has going for it is that it's only an hour and 50 minutes. And if you've watched our podcast, you know that I am a big fan of any movie, any franchise that can get you in and out of a theater in under 2 hours. There's just, movies tend to pad those run times today. I'm not a fan of that. One of the great things also is that when you get roles like this where you've got a big star. Think of Taken as well. You get a lot of great actors in these secondary roles. They always play law enforcement or something else. So think of like Taken. I got to see, I think it was Taken 3, which is the worst of all of them, but had Dylan Bruno, who's an actor I really like. He's a TV guy, but also had Forrest Whitaker. And you see that, and you wish you could get a more fleshed out version of that character. But if you've got a lead like a Denzel Washington or a Liam Neeson, you can't afford to cut away from them because they're the heart and soul of the project. So it's like you see these great actors that it's almost like you'd rather see them in their own project because they tease you with more of their character, but there's just not enough there. This movie was only an hour and 50 minutes, and the fact that the secondary story still felt irrelevant says something. They use the scenery of Italy unbelievably well. It's a character in and of itself. By the time this movie comes to a climax and you see him interacting with all of the bad guys, you understand very quickly why he's grown so fond of this place. And the actors who portray the locals do that very well, and Denzel does that very well. And the scenery sells it. It's gorgeous. The scenery is gorgeous. The cinematography is gorgeous. The bad guys are bland. That is up there with reasons. That is in movies like this, like whether it's the John Wick franchise, they go out of their way to kind of give those characters a lot of unique sentiments that it's not necessarily there to draw you to them, but it sets them apart. All of the bad guys in this film could have been the same person, and you end up not really caring. So when it comes to a climax at the end, I feel like it kind of falls flat because they didn't spend any time really fleshing out the villain as a full-fledged character. Both it's a main bad guy and his brother. They're generically evil. They do evil things to villagers and locals. It is what it is, right? You expect a lot of that in these franchises. The action in this movie, it borders on horror in places, the gore of it. They do an extremely good job through the score, which oddly enough, it kind of, I don't remember if it did this in the original film, but the score almost echoes that trailer score that they used for the Black Widow movie for the first teaser trailer. It was very jarring, and I really liked it, and that was kind of divisive if I remember correctly. Some people really liked it, some people really didn't. But between that and then the way that they show him stalking the people that he's going after, they kind of, it helps embody in a lot of ways the way they would talk about John Wick as Baba Yaga. He embodies that actually in this role as he's stalking the bad guys. And when you do get those action scenes, it's really good. It's just that there isn't a whole lot of them in this film, especially for a movie that's almost 2 hours long, 3 small major action set pieces to tide you over. If you're not a huge Denzel Washington fan like I am, that might make the scenes in the middle a little bit more wearing, especially if you're there to see action. It felt almost like a bottle episode of a television show. You know, it's the midway point of the season. They're running out of their budget. They got to work with a very small amount of sets to get things done, right? Because they don't have the money for that episode. That's the bottle episode. Because this film takes place almost all entirely in this area of Italy and it's shot on location, it's beautiful and it's unbelievably idyllic, and it feels very self-contained. So it's not, they're not trotting the globe, and something about that makes it more intimate and makes his connection with the other characters work better. Also, the film, I would say 75% of this film takes place is not in English. It's them speaking Italian, so you're going to be watching subtitles for about 75% of the movie, but it would feel unrealistic and very old school Hollywood to just have people in Italy randomly all speaking English to each other, even if, the American character's not in the room. And they actually, they have Denzel speaking the language here, and they use it as a plot point with Dakota Fanning's character for a period later. So guys, I enjoyed it. It's going to be contingent, I think, on a few things, whether you're a fan of Denzel Washington, whether you've enjoyed the Equalizer franchise before, if you're a fan of him getting together with Anton Fuqua, I think you're going to enjoy this film. I think the short runtime has a lot going for it. It really depends on those factors. So I would recommend going and seeing it if you were a fan of the previous Equalizer films, or especially if you're a fan of Denzel Washington. Look, he's a legend in the industry. He's only going to be around for so long. I want him to make as many. I made a tweet recently. I said, I wish we could have Denzel Washington make movies forever. The guy is he's a class act. He's a legend. I would love this guy. And I'm not talking like I don't want him signing some deal with an AI firm or signing some contract with Disney or any of these companies. I just wish in my heart of hearts that it was possible that Denzel Washington could be making movies forever because he's absolutely incredible at his job. So, guys, if you're a fan of Denzel Washington, if you're a fan of revenge thrillers, and if you're a fan of this franchise, I would recommend you go out and check it out. Otherwise, if you are not and you're hesitant to go out and spend the money, perhaps wait for it to end up on streaming. That's all I got for you guys. Would you go ahead and follow Pop Culture Crisis right here on YouTube? Subscribe to this channel if you have not done so already. We're live Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Talk movies, pop culture, celebrities, all that stuff. See you there, guys. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.